Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Got another of our interviews with executives of mining companies. Today, it's with one of my favorite companies, a sponsor, i-80 Gold, Ewan Downey. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on again, Allan.
You know, Ewan, with all this stuff that's happening with the banking crisis and inflation, and yesterday Chairman Powell he called the banking crisis recent banking developments, and took no responsibility for 14 years of near zero interest rates and then ratcheting them up to 5% and not realizing, oh, that's going to put a lot of banks in trouble because they're sitting on these underwater investments. I really think that we're in a perfect storm where investors that want to protect their money should be buying gold and silver, and those that want to see their money grow should be looking at the gold and silver stocks. What do you think about that analysis?
Oh, I think there's never been a more important time for investors to own gold and precious metals as an alternate currency. Gold is the only currency in the world that has no political attachment. There's no printing press, and it has no debt obligation. So it's a really unique currency that everybody should be taking seriously, especially in light of what's going on. To me, the Fed and these central banks around the world often are run by academics and people like that. They have no real world experience, and that's just coming to roost here. The 2008 crisis, it's like nobody learned from that you package up a bunch of garbage instruments that people invest in, and then when something changes in that, the monetary system goes into trouble. And what they've done over the last decade, like you said, in no interest rates, giving everybody free money to do whatever they want, it's as soon as they started turning on the interest rate hikes, it's going to hurt lots of people. And that pain hasn't been felt by people nearly as much as it will over the next year, because when people renew mortgages or renew loans on their vehicles, it's going to go up exponentially. And these people are going to be handing in the keys. I think the problem has just started. And the next year and a half is going to be the heyday for the gold price. And look at what other central banks around the world are doing. The non-Western banks, they're buying gold like crazy. They're throwing out the US dollars over the fence, and the Americans are throwing the gold back over at them. And there's more of a monetary war going on here as well between the East and the West, so to speak, than the mainstream media lets you know about. And I just think that in addition to the issues with no interest, all of a sudden you're going to 5, and they don't think about the repercussions about doing it so quickly, are just making those Eastern countries who are picking up gold look smarter and smarter. And, they're not going to be lining up to make sure that we do better over here in North America. They'll be doing what they can to make the problem worse for us. So I think there's a real crisis happening right now. The mainstream media, don't watch The View, because those women don't really know what they're talking about. But anyway, there's something more going on than people realize. And when people wake up to what the issues are with the financial system across the globe, I think we'll see gold hit all-time highs this year. I'm very convinced it's going to go up exponentially, and companies like ours will benefit from that.
But I don't think a lot of people realize that those central bankers, after the 2008 economic crisis, they were consistently buying more and more gold. 2022 was a record year of purchases, and 2023 is going to blow 2022 out of the water for central bank. They're showing you their hand. They're saying we're starting somewhat of a gold standard again with their own balance sheet, and investors should as well.
Yeah, they need to, because if governments are given the opportunity to just light up the printing press, there's no way they're going to tame inflation. There's not a chance they can do it. Look what happened to Zimbabwe. I think they had billion-dollar bills at one point. Currencies have failed and will continue to fail in the future that don't have any backing. And that's exactly what the Canadian dollar, the US dollar, the euro are. They have no backing. And we're starting to see countries like China and Russia and Turkey and India and all those countries really, I think, working towards the gold standard again. And there should be something that limits one's ability to print money, or they just do what they've been doing. Oh, who cares about debt? Just jam up the debt and look at what happens now. It's we're the central banks and the governments in North America have their backs up against the wall. And Yellen saying that, oh, we're going to make all the depositors whole. Well, I think there's only like $6 trillion in all of the central bank system, whereas the overall debt is like 22 trillion. They can't back up their words.
The depositors are $18 trillion in the US.
Yep. Yeah, it's
how do you back up $18 trillion?
It's impossible. So my advice is everybody should have 5 to 10% of their net worth at least in gold and gold stocks. And I'll continue to bang that drum. Of course, I have to say it. I run a gold company, but it's never been more important. I've been buying gold for years and years myself. Really, especially since 2008 is when I started converting my paper dollars into physical gold. And if you look at the derivative trades that are out there on gold and the paper gold that trades, there's way more gold trading than there is actual gold sitting on surface. So
well,
that's going
to come to roost too, Ewan, because what I'm hearing is a lot of people in those paper contracts are buying them just to take delivery. And you could see a run on the bullion banks, like we're seeing a run on the small banks in the United States.
Definitely. I actually have been expecting that for years with this loaning out gold, so to speak, and allowing people to trade it without anybody holding the physical. I think there's, I don't know how many multiples of paper gold is trading. How much is it?
100 to 1.
100 to 1. So how can that not end badly?
And you look at, another thing I haven't heard anybody say is that the problem is that you have these underwater bonds or mortgage-backed securities, and then the rates go up. You're going to have to roll those over into more expensive. And so that's why they're so underwater. But the Federal Reserve has an $8 trillion balance sheet. And guess what they're filled up with? The same thing as these small banks, mortgage-backed securities and long-dated bonds that are underwater.
Yeah, well, we'll see how this ends. But
today it's showing pretty good signs. We got gold up $54 an ounce and now over $2,000 an ounce. I think that's a real a mental thing for investors. Starts going over 2,000, and I think a lot of people are going to pour into the metals and the metals stocks.
Yeah, and the quarter point interest rate hike that was made yesterday is only going to make the banking jitters worse, because it's actually increasing the problem that they're trying to stop right now. Look at the Swiss banks getting together, UBS taking over Credit Suisse and being forced into it because they were essentially going bankrupt in a hurry. And if banks that big can fail, don't think that all banks can't fail. And so I'm even a little jittery about keeping any cash in the bank right now.
Here's to being on the gold standard. If the government won't announce an official gold standard, I think investors should.
Yeah.
Speaking of gold stocks, I believe that we're coming into a tide lifting all boats. And some companies are going to significantly outperform their peers. let's get into why i-80 Gold could be one of those kind of companies, Ewan.
Well, I think our company is ideally situated to profit on an increase in gold price. We have existing infrastructure. We have 2 existing processing plants that we're looking to start up over the next several years. And through the startup of those 2 milling facilities, we expect to become one of the largest producers of gold in the United States. So I think that alone will see our share price increase significantly. This year, we're going to start seeing our production increase from Granite Creek. And going into next year, we hope to start seeing gold coming out of Ruby Hill. So over the next several years, we're going to see significant increases in our company's gold production, ultimately coming out and starting the autoclave and or the Ruby Hill plant, which will see us grow into a mid-tier producer. And those type of companies today, especially in safe jurisdictions like we are in Nevada, are trading at market caps in the billions. And so I think we will be one of the primary companies that will profit from a rising gold environment because of our permitted existing infrastructure, the fact that we have over 14.5 million ounces of gold and 180 million ounces of silver resources that are in excess of most companies in all of the United States, that I truly believe our company is going to be a go-to gold company here in this cycle. In the last 4 months since we hit all-time highs, we've gotten beaten up a bit in the market because Equinox Gold had some financial issues related to building our old Greenstone project, the hard rock mine. But once they shore up their balance sheet, and with the sale of a few of our shares a couple of weeks ago, which will help them shore up that balance sheet, I expect that selling pressure would come off of our company and we should gap up at some point. And I truly believe that was the main reason for the drop over the last few months, but we should see an equal increase as that pressure comes off our company.
So you brought up a really good point there, Ewan. Say that, I'm right, and that a lot of investors start to back themselves up with the gold standard and look for growth in gold stocks. The profile of production growth that you guys have, if those are US people that want, what are their options? You guys are a great option because you trade on the New York Stock Exchange. So it's easy for American investors to get into your stock.
Definitely. And we're actually seeing now that the majority, we have more volume now daily on the New York Stock Exchange than we do in Toronto. And I think that is a realization that i-80 is a US only company. We operate 100% in the state of Nevada, USA. The front page of our presentation says made in the USA, even though we do have an office still in Canada. But the company does have the benefit of being on the New York Stock Exchange. And as the gold price becomes more prevalent, or the gold as an investment becomes more prevalent, we're going to see a lot of the index funds continue to increase their weighting in gold stocks. And given that not a lot of sort of growth-oriented companies out there are listed on the big board New York like we are, I would expect that we will be added to a lot of indexes over the next 6 to 12 months. And that will be another big benefit to our volume and our share price.
And you brought up something there, I think that's important, when one of the kinds of mining companies that do see outperformance of their peers are those that have a strong growth profile. And you guys are starting from here, and it's only going to ramp up over the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. In 2022, our production was just over 20,000 ounces over the year. The bulk of that was from residual leaching at Lone Tree and Ruby Hill. And it's this year that we expect to start seeing the processing of the Granite Creek ore start to ramp up as we get our 4th and 5th levels developed on that deposit and start to develop over to the South Pacific zone that should come online in 2024. And that will result in a very material increase in our gold production. So I think we're just starting to see our production ramp up, so that, as you call it, the Lassonde curve, we're on the bottom end of that. and we should profit as being one of the companies who is growing our production. We expect to be a low-cost producer in one of the safest jurisdictions in the world.
You know, speaking of that Lassonde curve, you guys have a very interesting story. I've been talking to people that I spend most of my time in those two sweet spots before you get the big run up on the exploration success and then the big run up on mining. And I try to be just before those two curves. You guys actually have projects at the sweet spots of both and a very narrow development discount window.
I agree with that assessment, and I think that's one of the reasons why we should be an outperformer, like we were in 22, again in 2023, and then again in 2024. Like you said, we are going to start to see the ramp up in production, especially over the next 2 or 3 years. That every year on year we should see significant increases that will be beneficial to our shareholders. Ultimately, we expect to become a cash flow positive company after we put in all of our development. But we've also made some very exciting new discoveries at Ruby Hill. And this year with the drill bit, we're really liking what we're seeing down there at Ruby Hill. And we've already made new discoveries in this year's program that we will be talking about here in the near future. So that project just continues to over deliver in terms of the exploration opportunity that we see there. And we are just drilling the first of three of our three major geophysical anomalies. And we believe all three of these could result in major new discoveries on this property. And what's really unique about the Ruby Hill property is we expect to discover new gold zones and new skarn zones, which would be primarily base metals. And we expect to discover new CRD zones that are expected to be very rich in silver and gold, much like our drilling in 2022. We haven't released any results so far for 2023, but you should start expecting those in the next couple of weeks, and it'll be a steady flow of results for the rest of the year. And we're very excited by what we're seeing down there at Ruby Hill. And I'm sure we'll impress you, Allan. I think you'll have us on your show a few times coming up.
You know, that's a tremendous, phenomenal of a mineralizing system that you guys have there. You've got the gold, you've got the CRD, you've got the skarn, and just off the chart numbers from those zones that you're hitting. It's looks like one big powerful system that is spectacular.
Yeah, and the Ruby Deeps deposit itself that we delineated in the first half of last year remains wide open for expansion. So some of our drilling we're doing right now is actually expanding the Ruby Deeps horizon. If you recall, we were getting 7.5 gram intervals up to over 70 meters and 20 gram material over 30 meters. And we're just starting to follow up some of those areas, and I'd expect that you'll see more good news to come out of not just the CRDs, but out of the gold as well.
And you I know it's a long ways away, but would that be something that would be a bulk underground mining scenario?
I think some of the areas of the Ruby Deeps will definitely be bulk underground mining. So our plan on filling the autoclave is to get about 1,000 to 1,250 tons a day coming from the Ruby Hill gold only zones. And with the kind of widths that we saw on the core parts of the Ruby Deeps deposit, we expect that will be easily achievable. So the mining costs, because of the large widths, will be very low compared to a lot of high-grade underground mining operations. And that should make up for the extra trucking distance that we have up to the Lone Tree site. But it does allow us to do a lot of, we believe, will allow us to do a lot of mining with not a lot of time put in that mining, because the stopes in some places are expected to be so big. So it's a really unique project. And Ruby Hill, remember, when we go underground, essentially you turn left and you mine gold, and you turn right and you mine base metals. So it's going to be one of the few mines in the world where there's actually going to be a gold mining producing from the same underground workings as a base metal operation.
But the base metal has high grade silver and gold in it too.
Yeah, we were getting consistently 10 to 25, 30 ounces per ton silver with our high grade base metals, and gold grades up to 60 grams. So the precious metal grades alone in a lot of those intercepts would be economic, never mind the base metals. And we were getting up to 40% lead zinc combined. So the grades here are just world class. And I think as we continue to step out, we'll demonstrate not only are the grades world class, but the scale of the operation is also going to become world class.
So Ewan, I want to go back a little bit, and I really think that the gold bull market started in November. At that time, the US dollar, even though the Fed was raising interest rates, the US dollar was coming down and gold was going up. Now, I'm always making the case that, well, you know, gold stocks offer you that extra torque. And especially you guys, during that November to, let's say, end of January bull market for gold, you guys were significantly outperforming your peers.
Yeah, up until year end, really in November, we were outperforming, I believe in 2022 amongst the developer stocks, like our company, the developers. I believe we were the top performing stock in 2022 for the smaller gold developer group in the mining market or in the gold sector. In November, December, the rumors came about Equinox Gold, who's our largest shareholder, sold all of their Solaris shares. The rumor was out there that i-80 is going next. Of course, they did make a sale a couple of weeks back, but that rumor took us from all-time highs in November down to a significant underperformance in the first month or two of this year. But now that block is sold, I think that the current environment is really going to help out Equinox's balance sheet with the higher gold prices. And with that perceived pressure of a sale by a major shareholder off of us, I would expect us to play a lot of catch up against our peers.
And I think Ross Beatty is a pretty sharp guy, and he likes to hold on to assets that can go up quite dramatically. And he's probably done a lot of homework on i-80 Gold. So if I was them, I'd be holding on to that 20. I think they own 20% now, or 19.9.
Yeah, just under 20%. That was an important marker for them to get to. There's certain reporting requirements for a company when you own more than 20% of another company. So it removes some of their reporting requirement. And our company actually doesn't qualify for some indexes because we have a shareholder of more than 20%. So with that removed, I would expect the weighting of our stock to increase in some of the gold ETF indexes.
Yeah.
And I would expect that we'll see even increased liquidity for our shares, and should see the share price appreciate significantly.
Well, hopefully they got to be forced buyers here pretty soon, Ewan.
Yeah, and if you look at the short position, we've got a pretty massive short position against the company. A lot of that short position was built on the back of the rumors of Equinox selling shares. So if in fact they're not selling any more shares, there's 10% of our stock that needs to cover. And that's 16, 17 million shares short. So just think about what that kind of buying would do to our share price. So I think we're going to have a great year here, Allan, and the expiration bit will help with the increase that I expect to see in our share price this year, and so should the increase in our production.
Well, you're really hitting on all cylinders on that Lassonde curve. And I think you guys have only been a public company for 2 years as of April. You're not, you're not a household name yet, but I think you're on your way to being one.
Yeah, we're definitely we've had a lot of meetings recently. The BMO conference that we were at just a month ago, at that conference, there were several groups we met with who had never heard of us before. And we're not owned by a lot of the big funds. Like, I don't believe BlackRock is a shareholder of ours yet, or Coppernick, or our T. Rowe out of Baltimore. So there's some very major funds that are in golds, and especially as these funds start to, I expect, want to see an increased weighting in their gold sector ownership, that we will be a stock that they'll have to look at. A company that operates just in Nevada, USA, that trades in New York. We've got significant liquidity. We're trading millions of shares a day. I think we check all the boxes for these funds and add those to the 10% short purchase, and I think it's going to be a great year for i-80.
Well, I think you're definitely one of those boats that are going to rise with the tide and outperform your peers, I believe, Ewan.
Yep. Well, it's been great being back on your show again.
Yeah,
And
we got
hopefully the next
to,
time will be on results.
sounds like a couple weeks and you should start to see some results out of Ruby Hill.
Yeah. We're seeing the results are starting to flow in. The labs still aren't super fast, but they're better than they were last year. But we don't want to do one-off press releases. So we're waiting for a slew of results, probably at least the first 10 holes of the program, and then have a steady, maybe every couple of months, release additional results. So it's not just saying, oh, look what we hit in this one hole. It's saying, look, here's what we hit in several different areas on the same property.
Or maybe area by area.
Yeah, maybe.
Good, Ewan. I know you're busy. Thanks a lot for coming on. Let me close it off and we can chat at the other end if you can stick around.
Okay.
So there you go, folks. I started by saying I think that these actions with the banks and the interest rates and the dollar and inflation are all pointing towards investors should protect their money with holding gold. Go on your own gold standard. And if you really want your money to grow, be looking at the gold, the silver stocks, because they can add that torque. And then when you look at the horizon of those kind of companies, a company like i-80 Gold is incredibly well positioned to outperform compared to their peers. They've got projects, they've got assets that are in various different stages of the Lassonde curve. They've got that growth profile in production. Investors in America are going to be looking for these kind of things, and they trade on the New York Stock Exchange. So all of those things combined, and their valuation, just the one processing facility would cost more than their current valuation. And Ewan made a great argument there that when things start to outperform, or when people look at an i-80 Gold, the profile of what they have usually leads to companies with multi-billion-dollar valuations, and they're currently sitting at about a $700 million valuation. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. Speak with your financial advisors to assess the risk profile. Do your homework. Go to their website. Go to our past interviews, and it'll help you do your homework. And I think those investors that do their homework are the ones that do the best in this business, and you'll be good to learn more about i-80 Gold. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks again.